for example, if their hands are bleeding through an exam paper and they're not able to, to do it, then there are things that can happen. There are concessions that can be made. And what I would say about government funding is that, as you're probably aware, it's been reduced hugely.
Something I really love about EOS is that you're kind of a smaller charity, and so you're not completely flush with funding, and so you put the money that you have to really crucial, needed project.
Because of the young people and who they are and their amazing bravery, they could say, you need to treat young people, you need to treat patients like a full human.
Welcome to the Life with a Difference podcast, a platform to amplify the voices of those living with a visible difference, and also to provide relevant information from industry leaders and experts.
Hello, Andy.
Hi, Suzi. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Today's a good day because it's my last weekly blood test before I go on to 3 monthly, which is exciting.
That's kind of a milestone, Andy, isn't it? That's
yeah. I just hate them so much. I must be pushing 100 blood tests, I reckon, over my life. I still just hate them so much. I just can't get over it. It's really annoying.
Well, I've not had that many, Andy, but when I have, I think I forget what it's like, and then you have them. I'm like, oh, it makes me feel, it's strange. And
that's the thing, yeah. It's not painful, is it? It's just like a weird sensation. It just makes you cringe a little bit.
Yes, it makes me, making me feel funny now. I know.
Yeah.
It's so hard. It's so hard for lots of the little people that have them as well when they're so,
Yeah. Yeah, my mum says that's where my sort of fear, I guess, comes from, is that when I was really young, I had one where they had to stab me a lot of times and weren't able to get it. And I kind of freaked out then. And I think it's stuck around from now, unfortunately. It kind of stays with you, doesn't it, when you have those horrible experiences from when you're younger?
It does, and we don't necessarily remember them exactly, do we? But you can remember maybe the feeling, or my littlest Hector, when he had a blood test for something, and he was tight, like really, he must have been like 4 months old, but he was so chubby that they couldn't find. That's to a vein, and we tried and tried. It was so traumatic. I think he was probably young, hopefully never ever to remember.
Yeah,
I was traumatized.
Oh, bless him. That's horrible, isn't it? Must be so hard being mum and having to kind of force them to do it. It must be really difficult.
Sort of turn away and
yeah.
Professionals deal with it, but
Yeah. For anyone listening, just from my own personal advice of flipping loads of these blood tests, drink loads of water, and make sure you're warm. Those two things are the main things to make it go smoothly. My one today, I think I was a bit cold or a bit dehydrated, or maybe a bit of both, and so they had to muck around a bit, which is makes it a lot harder. So yeah, drink lots of water and stay warm. I remember when I was having them monthly, I think because I'm on methotrexate now, but they're happy for me to go on to 3 monthly blood tests, where when I was younger, when I was on it, it was monthly. And I feel like I started to make a little bit of an improvement. And I remember saying to the nurse beforehand, I'm much better now. I think I'm getting to grips with it. And then afterwards, it was taking a little bit of a long time for her to wrap things up. I needed to get into the fresh air. That always really helped me. And I remember saying to her, I've got to admit, I am feeling a little bit dizzy. And it was like I time traveled or something, and all of a sudden I opened my eyes and there was 3 nurses around me. My feet were on a chair, and they just said, "Oh, you fainted. You're okay. Don't worry." It was a bit of a weird experience.
But it's quite normal, though. I bet it is quite.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're quite used to it. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. I feel like a CEO is a pretty good booking early on for like my 4th episode or whatever it is. So thank you very much for your time. Do you mind just briefly sort of introducing yourself, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Suzi Holland, and I'm the CEO of the charity Eczema Outreach Support. And I've been in post now, I think, for about 2.5 years, but I have been with the charity for, I think, going on 5, which has gone so fast. But for anybody who doesn't know, Eczema Outreach Support, which we sometimes called EOS, even though we probably shouldn't, EOS is a charity that was founded by a mum of a young girl with very severe eczema who couldn't find any support. They were struggling. They're in a small town. They had nobody that they knew who also had eczema in the way that her little girl did. And she just decided, this remarkable woman just decided one day to set up an organization that would provide that emotional side of things. So that community, that, someone to chat to, and then the practical stuff, like giving tips on how to apply creams or, how to manage at school, all these things. So we are still here, and we are now a UK-wide charity helping thousands of families across the UK. But I'm also mum to a little boy who has eczema, and that's kind of where this all started for me, where this journey began. And then I found Eczema Outreach Support, and now I'm so privileged to be leading us forward.
I absolutely love the story of Eczema Outreach Support. I think it's brilliant. I totally see it from my own journey, the women in my life that have just sort of trailblazed, I guess, and not took no for an answer and tried to find the answers, I suppose. And so hearing that, I thought was brilliant, the way she, so is it Magali? Is that how you say her name?
Yeah,
Magali, yeah. Couldn't find the answers, and so just made her own charity. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
It's so inspiring, isn't it? And it's, yeah, she really was a force, because she recognized that it couldn't just be her and her daughter. It must be so many other people as well. Mm-hmm. She just said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And it started from her spare bedroom in our house, and it just has grown and grown. And like I say, now we are UK wide, which is amazing.
EOS is one that is very, very close to my heart. I do a lot of, work with lots of other places and, other charities, but that's my condition. That's my visible difference. That's what I particularly suffer with. And I really love the way that you specifically target the youth age range, as from my experience, that was the hardest time. That's where looking different has the most challenges, I think. And also, just trying to make it through education when you feel like you're covering itching powder and your teacher's telling you need to focus, and it's just the hardest time for sure. So I do love that about EOS, that you focus on what is a particularly difficult time, I think.
Yeah, there are so many milestones, aren't there? So many points in your life when you're a child that, whether it's starting nursery, then it's starting primary school, then you go to high school, which is a whole different ballgame, and so hard, isn't it, for anybody on a normal day. And then after that, you're about to embark on being an adult. So it's big stuff, and it can make that really, really hard.
Yeah, for sure. I think people don't truly empathize sometimes with how hard it can make it. I almost said something I wasn't supposed to then. I was going to say about the project that we were working on earlier in the week that we're not allowed to talk about yet. But in that project, I had to kind of share how difficult it can be and how it's just so all-encompassing, and how it affects everything so deeply. I think there's a little bit of a difficulty in that people can empathise with eczema to a degree, and that because so many people have it, and a lot of people have experienced a rash and have experienced an itch, but they haven't experienced the chronic extreme side. And so I think sometimes we get a little bit written off because of that, when it's just simply not the same thing. It's not in the same universe, and that can be a difficult obstacle to overcome a bit, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, Andy. And the families that we work with often say they might have like a friend or another family member even who has quite mild eczema, and they'll say, oh, we get it, we know this is awful. And they're like, actually, it's so much worse than you could ever imagine. And I think that point you're making about it affecting so much, it literally affects every single minute of every single day for these children, but also their parents. And I think that's where it's so massively misunderstood and underestimated. It affects everybody. And it's not just the physical side, is it? I mean, the itch is unbearable at times. I mean, it's all encompassing, but it's the mental health, the mental well-being as well that's affected that I don't think people realise.
No, I don't. And the way I try and describe it is, just, cover yourself in itching powder and then just try and go about your day. It affects both extremes. It affects your productivity and your ability to focus, and it also affects your ability to relax, and your sleep. And it encompasses absolutely everything. I don't know if I told you actually, but in that project that I was on last week, we were in the waiting room and just about to go in to this room with like 80 people in, and they were supposed to start at 1:30, and literally the clock struck 1:30 and I had a power cut. It kicked me out. I was like, you are like, it was like to the second. And they were pretty much saying, right, we're going in now, everyone ready, and I got kicked out. Oh, I was flapping, but I think I got in just in time, luckily. That doesn't help the old anxiety at all.
No,
My hands were already clammy.
and even when it's online, a virtual room, if there's like 80 people, it's nerve-wracking, isn't it? It's a really, yeah, sometimes I think it's harder than it would be if you're in person. But yeah, well done for getting in. Thank goodness.
Yeah, no, it's just the internet takes a little while to build back. It's like, oh, come on. But it was okay in the end, fortunately. Thank goodness. I was having a little look at your LinkedIn. It seems like you've always been kind of involved in charity work one way or the other. So is that something you've been particularly pulled to and something that you find quite fulfilling?
Yeah, totally. So I went through the usual kind of stage of being a kid and wanting to be an archaeologist. Then I wanted to be a lawyer because I thought that was, that's a good job. Then I actually wanted to be a doctor and eventually went to university and studied English literature instead. And I knew from being at university and doing some volunteering, I did a lot of volunteering when I was at uni, that actually this sector was where I wanted to be. And it wasn't just about helping people. Often people will say to me, oh, you're so good. You do the job that you do. And I'm like, I really do want to help people, but actually this sector is incredible. It's so interesting. There's so many pioneering projects. There's just so much you can learn and really, really quickly that I just thought, I knew from probably about 20, that's what I wanted to do.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, it was quite a nice realization, actually.
Yeah, that's good. Nice and early.
What we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then volunteering for an HIV charity in Edinburgh. I did that for probably about 4 years. And there was a job that came up within their organisation. It was a really kind of junior entry level job, which was perfect at the time. And I went for it and got it, much to my surprise. And then that was the start. That was the start of, learning about the sector, working with different people. And then through that, I've kind of done various different roles. I've worked in youth homelessness, which was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was so eye-opening and so emotional, but amazing. I learned so much. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about how to kind of work with people going through, the most craziest of times. And then I've done various other cancer, for example, Parkinson's, and then eczema.
You've done a lot. Yeah, of course. You've done a lot. Yeah, no, it's so fulfilling, isn't it? I mean, it's something I'd never considered either at all. It was always something I wanted to downplay and hide away. And then from that very first project, I just realised, how fulfilling and liberating it was. It's liberating for me, kind of selfishly, just being able to step forward and say, this is me, this is who I am, rather than trying to hide it all the time. And just so fulfilling in being able to help people. But as you say, you just meet so many wonderful people with so many incredible stories and just have so much strength, which is kind of partly why I wanted to do this podcast. I've just met so many people that, I just had finished a recording yesterday with a lady called Stacey, and she was born with a cleft, and her son has the same. And just to have my eyes open to, I guess, just how difficult it is and just how much resilience it takes. I don't know, this is pure ignorance from me, but I always thought with the cleft, you had the one surgery, which is obviously not very nice, but then you're kind of done. She's had like 13 surgeries. She had one of them, she had to have bone taken from her hip as part of it, so you just don't realise the things these people are going through and how strong they are. So I totally agree that it's a very inspiring and fulfilling industry to be a part of, for sure.
And I think there's something, and I'm not kidding, eczema is this world that I'm in now. It's definitely my favorite place. But there's something for me about living with a condition that affects how you look, affects your appearance, that I just hadn't appreciated affects, so much more than just the skin. I mean, it is so much more, as we've sort of talked about. And I think the people that I've met, the young people that I've met, totally changed the way I think about so many things in life, and also about the way that I kind of respect the skin. It sounds a silly thing to say, but I respect it in a different way. It is our biggest organ, which my 5-year-old likes to tell me all the time. But also it's a world that is so much more than just the skin. It is so much about mental well-being. It's so much about a condition that can affect the choices you make now that will affect everything later in your life. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that I don't think people particularly truly consider. Is this? I need to find a better way of saying this, but the pain is so unisolated. It's not, you haven't got pain in your shoulder or in your knee. It's something that your entirety feels damaged and broken and unhealthy, and then you as your whole being feel broken and unhealthy. And it's very hard to separate you from your condition because it's so all encompassing. So yeah, that's a side of it that I don't think people really understand, and it can feel quite I guess suffocating and like you're trapped, I suppose, with very little reprieve. So yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How particularly for women with beauty and healthcare, it's all about the skin. But when it comes to the major chronic conditions, sometimes we kind of feel a little bit out of vogue, I guess, which I guess is one of the main obstacles of EOS, I'd imagine, is that eczema and visible difference is not particularly trendy. A lot of companies, when they're donating, they want to put their name to the big heavy hitters, and in a way, rightly so, of course. Your cancers and stuff like that where people are, their lives are immediately at risk. But then we sometimes get left to the wayside. And I think that there's this idea that skin conditions, because they're not immediately life-threatening, they're not dangerous. But I think you'd probably agree that there is a mental health aspect of it that makes them very dangerous, especially when suicide is so high.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, Andy. I completely agree. And I think with social media and being as prevalent and used as it is, I think the mental health impacts are even greater. Like, we have young people who say they go on Instagram, they're like, I'm looking at these images. I know they're not real, but I'm seeing them so many times, they start to become real. And then I'm comparing myself with them. And yeah, the impacts are huge. They just kind of feel like they're not worth it. They feel that they're not, the same. They feel so different. And it's really devastating because that is really isolating. And then if you're then, really unwell with eczema and you're not able to go to school, say, or whatever it might be, your world is quite digital. So your world becomes what you're seeing on Instagram, what you're seeing on TikTok. And that's really hard, really, really hard.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that before. Yeah. If you're isolated, you try and find that social interaction online, don't you? Yeah. And that's quite difficult. I found myself, because I've always tried to, I guess, fight against it and try and prove to everyone that I'm worth something and stick it to everyone that was nasty to me, and I kind of found myself falling into that hole a little bit. I remember we were on a holiday in Santorini with my wife, and we were putting the usual photos up and everything looked nice and everything like that. And in the meantime, I was having a massive flare, but I was just kind of hiding it. And I thought, I'm becoming part of the problem here. And so I had a little blog at the time, and so I kind of did a sort of an Instagram versus reality post, and just to show that, it all looks so wonderful on Instagram, but it's not reality, and more people need to see that. And I think there's starting to be a bit of the very beginnings, the very embers of a trend towards visible difference. I keep seeing people pop up every now and again. On The Apprentice at the moment, there's a guy with a visible difference, and I think, with my work with Changing Faces, race across the world are trying to get someone with a visible difference as well. So I think that it's starting to move, and I guess it's quite potentially maybe a bit exciting for you that you're a CEO of a charity kind of at the start of that wave, potentially.
Yeah, I think it is really exciting. I mean, it's really interesting when you talk to the young people about how they, that are they starting to see that? Are they starting to see representation growing? And they say, yes, we are. And actually on Instagram, particularly in TikTok, there are some young people particularly who are sharing their journeys. But actually what the young people are saying to us is they are very brave and very strong. I don't feel that strong yet. And I think that there's that to kind of consider, isn't it? That these people who are putting themselves out there are incredibly strong. They might not feel it themselves, but that's certainly certainly what comes across. And it's something that a lot of young people don't feel able to do because the world is still so fixated on what is beautiful, and clear, perfect skin is what's considered beautiful. But I think for us, it's massively exciting because it's almost like opening a door to this real world that if we can make real, if we can stop it being, Instagram is real, then all of these young people will start feeling that little bit better about themselves and perhaps feel a bit stronger and braver to say, this is me. And actually some of them will say, do you know what? Eczema is really, really hard, but it's made me the person I am. And I'm actually starting to become proud of the fact that, yes, I have eczema and this is what I'm doing and this is the life that I've created. So there is some little sparkles of positivity among them.
Yeah, there's some incredibly brave people on the influencers that pretty much focus just on that. I think it's incredible. They're often very young. They're often in the trenches, frankly, in terms of what I think is kind of the hardest time in terms of your physical appearance, and for them to step up and sometimes speak to hundreds of thousands of millions of people, I think it's just amazing. And I don't think they realise quite how important they are to a lot of people. And it kind of inspired me to do this as well. Again, I wanted to hide away my whole life. I didn't want to step out into the light with this, but that's really inspired me to do the same thing. And I'm 32. I have a wife. I have a home. I'm quite settled. My life is quite settled. I've kind of got to the stage where things are quite balanced. And it's even still, I find that idea so daunting. I know that my friends aren't gonna, get rid of me because I've done this. But, I didn't know if that was the case when I was, 15, 16, 17.
So we at EOS have a youth panel, which you'll know a little bit about, Andy, but for anyone who doesn't, it's young people with eczema age 16 to 25. And talking to some of the younger members of the panel, they will say when they're in their teenage years, actually, it is different when you're a teenager in school. When you're a little bit older, 23, 24, you've got a little bit more time away from that world and you can reflect a bit. And I think for us, one of the greatest powers of the youth panel is to be able to look back and remember it all as raw as it was, but also have had that little bit of time where they're not worrying that their friends are going to disown them, or I don't know, someone's going to put a picture up of them on social and comment, say horrible things. They're sort of through that. They're still very much in it, but in eczema, but they're able to reflect. I think it's really, really hard when you're a teenager, particularly.
Yeah. Do you think there is any kind of improvements recently? I felt like there was minimal concessions when I was at school. Do you think that things are getting better at school nowadays?
I think it totally varies,
Okay.
which might feel like a cop-out answer, but I feel like it does. Although what we're trying to do as an organisation is make sure that parents and carers of younger children and then, young people understand what they can ask for and understand that actually, for example, if their hands are bleeding through an exam paper and they're not able to, to do it, then there are things that can happen. There are concessions that can be made. There are, support systems available to them. It just might be that the teachers don't know or that nobody asked, so the teachers didn't say. I think there is some movement, and sometimes it's really about us empowering and supporting young people to advocate for themselves, and the same for parents as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I guess that takes us on to, would you mind talking a bit about some of the services that EOS provides?
Yeah, definitely. So we are very, very much led by the families, as you probably imagine. Started by a family, we continue to be completely driven by a family. And actually what matters most to the families at the moment is community, which is probably not a surprise. It's about finding your tribe, children finding their tribe, parents, carers finding support system. So we do lots of peer support. We do an online, what we call grab a cuppa, where parents, carers bring a cup of whatever they're drinking and they just talk about the stuff that matters most. And it could be anything from their own mental health and how guilty and exhausted they are, how they feel so terrible for what's going on and helpless to help their child. They can then support each other with that. Or it might be more practical stuff like, how did you manage at school? What did you do? what do you do about school uniform that's itching or whatever it might be? But that's regularly online, and it's a very emotional session. Absolutely. But it's such a safe place that parents can say whatever they want, and they know they're not going to be judged.
Yeah, it's so needed. It's so needed. When my mum, I always mention my mum and never my dad. My dad was brilliant as well, but mum was kind of my champion, I guess, in a lot of ways. And she just said she felt super lonely and kind of confused and not sure which way to go. And so that service, I know she would have been all over it for sure. That's just so needed.
It totally is. And for some parents, they don't feel able to talk. They don't feel able to join that. So we actually have a closed Facebook group as well, where people can kind of post in the middle of the night when they're worrying about something, and then they'll get that peer support in a way that's not, they don't have to sit there and talk. They don't have to, they can be at home and whatever it might be. And that's really valuable. Yeah, we find that really valuable. And then the sort of more, I guess, in-person stuff is around the events that we put on. So we put on big family events when we can, and we bring people together in a location and they meet in person. And actually for a lot of the children, that is the most special thing, because it might be the first time ever they've seen another child with eczema like them. And they are so safe, and they just all come together, and it's almost as if the eczema just doesn't matter anymore. It's what's brought them together. But they'll be doing a circus skills workshop, or they'll be drawing together or playing together, and it just doesn't matter about their eczema anymore. It's not the thing. The thing is that they're together and they're having a great time. That's really important.
Yeah, that is just wonderful. Again, that is, I think a lot of people who've gone through school with eczema have this general feeling of having your shoulders by your ears waiting for that next comment, because they often do come. And so the idea of being able to, but a lot of us, we still want to socialise, we still want to make friends. The idea of being able to go to one of those events and that not be a factor is just, I can't explain how freeing that is. I'm going to a Changing Faces meetup on the 20th, and normally that kind of thing, walking into a room of all new people just fills me with anxiety. What happens on that day if I'm having a really bad flare, etc. And it kind of clicked a few days ago. Everyone there knows my story. They know why I'm here. And so, I can't explain at all how crucial that is, especially to children who've never seen anyone like them before. And that's something I really love about EOS, is that you're kind of a smaller charity, and so you're not completely flush with funding, and so you put the money that you have to really crucial, needed projects. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and we will remain. I mean, we have about 4,500 member families that we support in and out. So with eczema, as you're really aware, Andy, but it changes, doesn't it? And there'll be times for some families where actually the eczema is really tricky and they're really struggling, but they might get a little bit of reprieve. We hope that they do. And, a child might be all right for a couple of years, and then they'll come back to us. And that's really important to us, is that they know we are there for the whole journey, and that they can dip in and out when it matters or when we're useful. We will, whatever happens. I mean, there are so many more families that need us. We want to grow, and we will, but we will always keep coming back to exactly it is what they need. And then because we know what they need, we can use the funds that we have in the best possible way. And it's an absolute privilege to be able to support the families that we do and work with them. And every single one of my team feels that way. So it genuinely is all about the family at the centre, which, we hope to continue forever.
Sometimes it's not appreciated how much of a responsibility and how difficult it can be raising a child with a chronic skin condition. And so the parents kind of get left to the side as well sometimes, and they don't get that support they need, and they don't get even that recognition. We all want to be told from time to time, you're doing well, keep going, you're okay, we've got you. And so I guess again, that falls into the all-encompassing nature of the condition, is that it then affects the entire family also. And I think, being able to just offer that support network and have people being able to just look after each other will make a huge, huge difference. If you had kind of unlimited funding, what would be some projects you would want to potentially do?
Oh, I love that question. Something I've never thought about. And no, cool. Knows about this. So actually, we last year did a really big piece of work scoping out our new strategy, which will be officially launched in the new financial year, which is coming up really fast. And in that, we learned loads about what families wanted and needed. If we had unlimited funds, we would listen to what the families were saying about face-to-face meetups needing to happen more regularly and there being a really local type of support. So we would put money into kind of creating support that was local to where people are, whether it's, support across every county or every local authority or whatever it might be, but having that face-to-face option for those that want it, but also that really, really kind of in-depth knowledge of the services and support that are available in those locations outside of us, because we're really brilliant with eczema and we can really support with the aspects around that. But actually families' lives are busy and there are so many factors that might affect them. It might be that their child is also neurodiverse and they'd like some specialist support around that. It might be that they're living in poverty and they need access to a food bank or whatever it might be. So what we would want to do is create a model where we really were the expert in their kind of their local area so they could have that support and get people together face to face. And it's not for everyone, as we know, but that safe space that we just spoke about is so vital. And to be able to offer that to everybody, regularly would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that would be incredible. You just feel yourself relaxing immediately when you can talk to somebody who understands what you've been through. So yeah, no, that would be amazing. But my next question would be, what are some of EOS's biggest obstacles? And I can imagine what kind of the main one is, really.
I guess so. Funding is one of the massive things for us. It's not the only one now. I'll share a couple of others, but funding is huge because we are in that almost interesting, let's say, space whereby we're a small organization with a small team, a mighty team, but a small team, but we're UK-wide. We're working with a condition, that affects 1 in 5 children. I feel that I haven't got any specific evidence to back this up, but I feel like it's becoming increasingly common. We're certainly hearing families say that to us and some clinicians as well. So we're in that space where we're not a big, huge organization like some of the biggies with these massive kind of profiles and, incredibly strong brands, but we're also not a tiny local charity helping in a small area. And sometimes that's really tough to attract funding because people like to support tiny, or they often like to support, the bigger brands, so to speak. So that is tough. But on the other hand, we have the most amazing, team of members and volunteers and staff, and everybody is so committed and so, I guess, passionate that that's an amazing opportunity for funding for us. I guess the other challenge is what we've talked about, and that is the fact that, eczema is so underestimated. So people don't realize, some people say to me, oh, I didn't think eczema needed a charity. I hear that phrase an awful lot, but it's just a bit of an itch, can it not just be salted with some cream? And surely there's a cure for eczema. And, the answer is no, it's not. So that's a big obstacle, but that's something we're really working on. And things like this, Andy, are helping to tackle that, which is amazing.
As you say, I had no idea about how difficult the fundraising was side of things before working with charities, and how that just is kind of the foundation of everything, and just how much time and energy and resource has to go into that. Yeah, and as you said about the people not quite grasping the severity of the situation, in my opinion, one of the key ways of doing that is to try and not shy away from the dramatic stories, I suppose, and the gritty stories. I think that's what made me want to do the podcast, is that I was doing work, for example, with other pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that, and understandably they're quite limited by regulation, and it's a little bit surface level sometimes, and I totally understand it, but you can't say the hard thing. They don't want you to really get into the details. Whereas I feel like this, along with my blog, can potentially give me scope to say the difficult things. I got asked by a company to write an article recently, and they wanted me to essentially choose a topic, and I chose the idea that I think caregivers can sometimes stray into sort of unconsciously into victim blaming for when children scratch and damage their skin. It's almost as if, their symptoms are self-inflicted. But if as I keep saying this, but if you cover someone in itching powder for days, weeks, months, there becomes a point where that's not a choice. Everyone would break eventually, and you have no choice. But so often when you do, the damage you can do is so extreme. And so I try my best not to hide away from how severe it can be, because I think a lot of people in the eczema community and the visible difference community have kind of downplayed and hidden away due to feelings of low self-worth and low self-esteem. I think it's kind of important for us now to really hammer home these points. Same as in when you go in for an appointment with the doctors, isn't it? We all know now that you can't, when the doctor says to you, how you doing, you can't say, oh, I'm all right, just this. You need to say, I'm on the edge, I'm really struggling, and kind of be in the squeakiest wheel. Sorry, that was a bit of a long sort of monologue, but yeah, I think it's really important to hammer home how difficult it can be, because people, unfortunately, at the moment still don't quite get it.
No, definitely. And actually, one of the things we do, we have a one-to-one service as well. We have parents, carers, and anyone, young people aged 16 to 18 can phone and speak to one of our team. And often our team support them to articulate what they're going through. And they might do a little practice session for going to see your GP. So you can get in there in those 10 minutes or 7 minutes, depending where you are. You can get all of those messages across exactly as you say, Andy, without holding back. Same for school. If you have a parents' evening, or whatever it might be, you might only have a couple of minutes to talk about your child's well-being. And actually in those 2 minutes, we'll support them to say what counts and what matters, and not to hold back. I don't know whether it's a very kind of classic thing for us all to do, but we often downplay, don't we? I mean, if I go to the GP and they ask me how I am, I always say I'm well, and I'm thinking, but I'm not, and that's why I'm here. So why am I saying that? But I think we're all in a lot of us in a habit of doing that. So you're absolutely right. It's about say it how it is, and don't be ashamed. I think sometimes when people say to us, oh, well, if I say it how it is, somebody might blame me, as you touched on, or I feel responsible because maybe I haven't been putting my creams on every day. And we're like, but no, do you know what? You're doing your best. Same with parents, they're doing their best. So don't be afraid to say it how it is.
Everyone's got a bit of advice or a bit of an idea or something they think that will help. Or, when I look at these influencers online and the comments underneath are all people recommending whatever it might be, it's quite frustrating. Whereas for other conditions, you don't get that quite as much. And as you say, there's certain conditions where you say the word and the GP knows the path immediately and you're put onto that path with the urgency it requires. Whereas for us, that just simply isn't the case. So you have to kind of demand what you need, really. And yeah, I think that's excellent that EOS are doing that and offering that service, because that's something that I was taught essentially by my mum, to advocate and demand and not take no for an answer. And I can feel like there's a lot of people out there that don't have that, and understandably so. We're all kind of trained to just lean on the experts and do what they say. And so, yeah, I think that's really important that people are told, no, just demand what you need.
And that you can and you should, that you're, I think it's that self-worth thing, isn't it? It's like feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not able to do this, maybe I'm not worth it. And actually, certainly, our youth panel again, you were touching on earlier about how, sometimes with certain companies or whatever it is, not able to say it how it is. One thing our youth panel can and do is absolutely tell it how it is. So they stood up on the stage a couple of years ago at a big conference, a big dermatology conference. And they did. And they looked around at this room of absolutely incredible professionals, there's professors and these consultant dermatologists with registrars, people really, really, at the top of the game, or certainly heading that way. And they actually said, you know what, guys, you're brilliant, but you're also doing a bad job. And it was sort of like, wow, okay. And there were some hard things, I think, for the audience to swallow in certain respects. But I mean, they did, and they listened, and they asked some amazing questions to the panel afterwards. But because of the young people and who they are and their amazing bravery, they could say, you need to treat young people, you need to treat patients like a whole human. And they could say the kind of really cutting, really clear things to this hugely experienced group of dermatologists. But they said it how it was. And I just think that's so important.
Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant. I don't know where you find these youngsters, but they sound really good. They sound great. They sound a lot braver than I was at their age, for sure. No, that's brilliant. I do think I think that they're starting to listen and take these things on board a bit more. I think just from doing my own patient advocacy work, the amount of organisations that want to hear it, and I'm doing a project with the British Association of Dermatologists all about GPs, and you're just starting to get the sense that they are starting to listen, are starting to take it on board, and treating people holistically is very, very important. That's something that I felt was missing growing up. In terms of, so you've got the normal routes nowadays of you try your topicals don't work, you go onto your immunosuppressants, your methotrexates, etc., cyclosporins, and then you've got the biologics and the JAK inhibitors. What is the options for under 18s? Do you know what they're able to go on to?
So it does vary. There's a lot of options for 12 plus so there's various different treatment options that they're able to go on to. There's much more limited for kind of age 3 plus, and even younger than that. I think what we hear from families is they get stuck at kind of primary care. So they're really using a topical steroid and an emollient. And that's really where it stops for a lot of families, because GPs, rightly or wrongly, they desperately, want to help, but rightly or wrongly, they're trying to keep them in their care because they're not sure maybe if a referral's needed, or they feel like they can manage it in primary care. So what we find is that there are lots of different treatment options often available, but so many families don't get that referral, don't experience them. There's lots of fear around topical steroid use at the moment.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Just kind of personally, I know there's not a lot of science hard science at the moment. What do you think about that?
I think we desperately need more research. And actually, behind the scenes, there's various different researchers who are trying to get projects off the ground. The National Eczema Society are really pushing hard with this as well, which I'm really supportive of. We need to understand, particularly the syndrome topical steroid withdrawal. We need to understand what that is, because you'll see it all over social media.
Yeah,
it is.
I spoke to a dermatologist about it, and they were very dismissive. This was a year or two ago.
Yeah,
they were very dismissive of it. But yeah, as you say, you keep seeing more and more about it.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
It is, and I think what we would always say to a dermatologist, to a dermatology nurse, is that if a patient comes to you and is worried about it, you need to listen and understand that whilst they might not be going through topical steroid withdrawal, it might be potentially very severe eczema that's not being treated. You have to respect that they feel that they are, and that they've found their information, and they will have researched it so much. And yes, it might be that some of that research is of places that aren't, they're not valid, they're not truthful, but that's where they are at. And I think if we're going to support patients, support families particularly well, we need to be where they are and listen to what they have to say, and understand that they've got to that place, because they might just be seriously desperate at thinking, I don't know what to do. Maybe this is topical steroid withdrawal. My child's eczema is so out of control, but actually, is it something else? And I think we're just going to meet them where we are and respect that they're going to get their information from social, from Google. And if you reject it or reject them, they will withdraw completely. And then that relationship is broken, which is really damaging.
Yeah, you need to keep them close, because as you say, there's so much out there. And when you're desperate, when things aren't working down the normal NHS route, it's very tempting just to think it doesn't work entirely and go off into the depths of Google. I don't know if you saw that show recently, Apple Cider Vinegar, on Netflix.
I haven't seen it.
That?
No,
it's about.
It's on the
yeah. So it's about the Australian woman called Belle Gibson, who said that she had brain cancer, and said she was going to fix everything with fruit juices and all kinds of stuff, and that world is very ready to take your money and time and attention. And so it's really important for doctors to empathize that there is a temptation to that, but not just dismiss and almost ridicule and critique especially when you're not, as the doctor, able to get the results. And so it's kind of only natural that people would try and look elsewhere a little bit. So yeah, I totally agree that you've got to try and keep hold of them and give them hope in the NHS route so they don't go down the dark side.
And there might be some things, I think there's a lot that patients can teach doctors and vice versa. I think it's, there's so much that we learn from the families all the time. I mean, I can't even begin to explain. There's so much we learn from them all the time. And I think there's just that openness to learn from the patients as well is really important, and build that respect. And then there is that sort of trust. And we have, members of our youth panel who have, gone through TSW, and they feel like they've gone through it and they're at a different place now. But because the professionals that supported them were respectful, they're still engaged with them, and they're looking at different treatments and how they can manage their eczema moving forward. So I think that relationship is so important. And there are some incredible professionals out there. I mean, some amazing ones who will go on that journey, even if they don't, we don't yet understand what TSW is. Professionals will still listen and learn and go on that journey with the patients.
Yeah. Yeah, when you find a good one, it is the nicest feeling. You can always tell from before you even sit down. Just the way they listen, the way they empathise. It is just such a relief, because too many of us have had quite bad experiences, I think, and that is absolutely crushing. And so when you get a good one, I'm under Guy's Hospital in London, and it's just brilliant. They're all involved at kind of the top level, and they have the latest and greatest treatments. And yes, as some practical advice for people, I'd say if you can get a vibe whether your healthcare professional is really listening and empathetic and on the ball, and if you get that vibe, you're not stuck to that consultant or that doctor. There's a little bit of a belief, I think, with people using the NHS that you get referred to dermatologist, you see that dermatologist, and that's the end of the road. It's absolutely not the end of the road. You can then go and get second opinions and go to anywhere you want to go. So I guess this comes back to the advocating for yourself and standing up for yourself, stuff that you definitely need to be willing to do that, for sure.
Yeah, and not blaming yourself if a relationship with a healthcare professional doesn't work. Sometimes we just know as humans, don't we, that sometimes we don't get on with certain people and relationships can't be built, and that's okay. And I think one thing I'm really, really passionate about is that patients, young people with eczema, don't blame themselves. There's a lot of blame. I think a lot of guilt parents feel, a lot of, oh, this is my fault, or I've done something, and actually we need that to go, because it's really damaging. And certainly when it comes to a relationship with a healthcare professional, it's okay if it's not working out. You can ask for someone else, and that's not your fault. You just need to, remember that you're absolutely worth it. I think self-worth is such a huge thing. You're absolutely worth it, and you can ask for someone else. It's really important.
Yeah, totally agree. I totally agree. So for people who would want to help out or get involved with VOS, other than writing a nice big juicy check, but that's always welcomed as well. What would they be able to do?
So there's loads and loads of different ways. Well, you're very involved, aren't you, Andy? You're an amazing support, and the project that we can't talk about, but that hopefully we can soon. Sharing your own story is massive. People can do all sorts for us. I mean, when it comes to the fundraising, obviously, I love you. Juicy check is fabulous, but actually, we've got places for all these amazing runs, like the Great North Run, and lots of different runs across. Lots of different challenges, I should say, across the UK. If people want to get involved in that side of things, fundraising wise, but also can volunteer with us. There's lots of different things that our volunteers do. Sometimes they might help with things that might be considered boring, like admin, but actually, goodness me, admin is incredibly supportive. They might want to help run a peer support session. They might want to come to an event and volunteer there. If they're a young person aged 16 to 25, then our youth panel is the place to be. But there are also lots of things that volunteers do quietly behind the scenes, and it might be something as, inputting into our website or helping us to support projects like you did, Andy, while they share their own story. It might be coming to a conference and talking to clinicians about what they're going through or what their family are going through. So what I would say was, if anyone's interested in getting involved in any way, they just get in touch with us. They can just email us or send us a message on social and say, do you know what, I want to get involved. And what we do is work with them to work out the best, most, exciting part of the organisation that they can get involved with, depending on who they are. And that's one of the benefits of being small. We can do that. We work with our families, we work with our volunteers to get them into things that they like and that they can really enjoy.
Yeah, well, I mean, we joke about the donation thing, but genuinely, EOS use the money so well, and it's such a lean charity in that there's no waste there. It all goes to really, really important things. So if you are considering a donation, I'll put the sort of a link below in the show notes. Or if you're a company potentially with a charity committee, for example, please do get in touch, because the money is very, very well used for sure. And it's been, if anyone wanting to be involved with EOS like on a voluntary basis, as Suzi says, that's something I do. I'm on the advisory panel, and I feel it's very fulfilling work. And again, to tease that project that we can't talk about yet. It was what I've got you. That was a real privilege to be a part of. So thank you for thinking of me. It feels very fulfilling and inspiring doing such tangible work. And potentially helping people. So thank you for the opportunity for that. And thank you very much for your time today. As I say, getting a CEO on was quite a good booking. I'm conscious of taking too much of your time, because I imagine you're crazy busy. But thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved it. It's so nice to take the time to kind of reflect in the way that we have. So no, I've loved it. And please ask me again in the future.